All right, this lesson is about photosynthesis, which is how plants' cells get energy. And the notes for this lesson should go on page 23 in your notebook. Now, we've been talking about cellular respiration and fermentation, and these things take place both in plant and animal cells. But remember, animals, in order to get the food that they use for cellular respiration to get the energy out, they have to eat other living things, either plants or animals. We call them heterotrophs because of that. But plants are different. Plants don't have to eat. They can manufacture their own food, and they use the sun's energy to do that. The process is called photosynthesis, which literally means light making. Synthesis is to make something. Photo means light. So this is making something with light. And so we call them autotrophs. Autotrophs, that means they can eat by themselves. They don't have to eat another organism. So we're going to be talking about autotrophs doing photosynthesis in this lesson. Let's start by talking a little bit about sunlight. Only about a third of the sun's energy actually reaches the earth, and of that about 1% is captured by plants or autotrophs. Sunlight comes in different wavelengths, which are different colors. So when you think about the entire rainbow, when you see a rainbow in the sky, that's all the different colors of light that come to us from the sun. Light from the sun is actually made up of many different colors. We think of it as being kind of a yellow or a white color, but it's really made up of many colors. Inside plant cells, the chloroplast is the one that can absorb the sun's energy. And within the chloroplast, there are pigments that absorb certain colors of the light that come from the sun. They reflect the rest, and so the colors that they reflect, that's what we see as the color of that particular pigment. So we can think of it like this. We have all the different colors coming from sunlight. Normally they're not a rainbow, they're mixed together, but the pigments within this leaf are going to absorb the sunlight in order to make food for the plant. And some of the light will not be absorbed. In this case, it's green light. Green light is reflected out, and that's why plants appear green, because that reflected light is coming out. So the pigment that is the green color is a pigment called chlorophyll, and these are the main pigments that absorb light energy in plant cells. It's what makes plants look green. There are two types of chlorophyll, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, and then plants have all kinds of other pigments that give them their other colors. So when leaves change color in the fall, it's because of those other colors beginning to come out, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. There are also other pigments that give flowers their color, and of course fruit is different color as well. So this graph shows you some of the pigments that we find in plants. Here's the wavelength, and that tells you kind of the color. We've got blues and greens, yellows and reds. And then this is the absorption, how much they absorb of the sunlight. And so we have chlorophyll A and B here, and you can see there's a dip. The green and blue dip way down right here in this green area, which means they're not absorbing that light. But plants have other pigments, in this case phycoerythrin and phycocyanin, and these two pigments will absorb in that green range and pick up the light that the chlorophyll can't. We also have beta-carotene, you may have heard of that. That gives plants their kind of orange-yellow color, and they don't absorb here in the yellows and reds, so they're reflecting that. The phycocyanin is not absorbing in the blue, so it appears the blue color, and the phycoerythrin does not absorb in the reds, and so it appears in sort of a red color in plants. Now remember, chloroplasts are the organelles that are doing photosynthesis, and they have the chlorophyll in them. Chloroplasts actually have two outer membranes, and then they have a fluid-filled area in the middle called the stroma. In the stroma are stacks of membrane that we call thylakoids. So here's the structure of the chloroplast, and we have an outer membrane and an inner membrane. There's double membrane. And then we have this fluid-filled interior called the stroma. Within the stroma, we have these stacks of thylakoids. I like to call them pancakes because they look kind of like pancake stacks to me. But there you have it. Now, when we think about the process of photosynthesis, it's written kind of like an equation. Just like with cellular respiration and fermentation, we were writing it as an equation. Same thing here. Carbon dioxide, that's what plants need, and water is required as well. We need some energy from the sun. And then what are they going to make? They're going to make some food, sugar, glucose, and they're going to give off some oxygen as a byproduct, and of course we like that part because we can breathe that in. You might notice that this is almost the exact opposite equation from cellular respiration. I do want you to notice that. In cellular respiration, if we're going this way, oxygen and food makes ATP energy, right? And water and carbon dioxide come off. So between cellular respiration and photosynthesis, they're almost like opposite reactions. Here's another diagram that illustrates this process. We have water coming in the roots of the plant, carbon dioxide coming in from the atmosphere, light energy is required, and then what's going to come out is oxygen. What's not showing is, of course, in the leaves, they are making some sugar, some glucose. Photosynthesis has two stages, the light reaction and the dark reaction. In the light reaction, the sunlight is captured. So in the light reaction, the sun's energy is captured by chlorophyll, and it's converted into ATP. We've seen that before. You know what ATP is now. In this step, oxygen is released, and this happens on the membrane of the thylakoid. There are some proteins embedded in the membrane, and it's these proteins that help the reaction to happen, including the pigments, chlorophyll, and the others. So here's a diagram representing that. We have the sun's energy coming in. Here are the stacks of thylakoids. In this process, water is used, ATP is created, and oxygen is given off in the process. This is just step one of photosynthesis. This is the light reaction. In the second step, it's called the dark reaction. It's also called the Calvin cycle. You might also see it called the Calvin-Benson cycle. In this step, the ATP that was created in the light reaction is used to make glucose from carbon dioxide. This has a lot of steps that we're not going to talk about. Just like with cellular respiration, you don't need to learn all those steps. But in all those steps, glucose is converted, in all those steps, we get glucose out. And then once the glucose is created, it's almost immediately converted to starch right away in the cell. And then that starch is the storage that the plant uses for energy. Now this dark reaction happens in the stroma, in the fluid-filled part of the chloroplast. So finally, here's an overview of photosynthesis. We start with the light reaction. Sunlight comes in. This happens on the thylakoid of the chloroplast. In this process, water is used and oxygen is given off and ATP is created. The ATP is used in the Calvin cycle. There's a whole lot of steps that happen. This is the dark reaction or Calvin-Benson cycle. In this step, carbon dioxide comes in. It's the carbons from carbon dioxide that are going to actually make the glucose. You need 6 of those, right, to make glucose. So these are going to come in, and glucose is made. The ATP is used to make the glucose, and then ATP actually gets recycled. Don't worry too much about this part, but it's the phosphates coming off that we talked about before and releasing that energy. So here's the whole process of photosynthesis, and that's it for this time. Oh, and one more thing. Just to make sure you're listening to the video all the way to the end, in your notes for extra credit, which I'm sure you're enjoying some extra credit if I offer it, I want you in the top left corner of your notes, the top left corner, to draw me a cute little sun and color it yellow. In the top left corner of your notes, a cute little sun, color it yellow. Don't tell anybody, because they have to listen to the video all the way to the end. And if you did, congratulations, you get a reward.